Okay, so I stop my screen and I ask Ina and Michael to start this.
Michaela?
Yeah, okay, so I'll start. So good afternoon, everybody. So we are Ina and Michaela, and we present you our concept for commemorative walking in Jungfernhof. So you can go next. So this is the first slide with our first impressions about the site. These are the first sketches and impressions that we had about the site. The most important impressions for us were when the people come to the Jungfernhof. It seems that it's a more recreational space. So you can see there the idyllic scenery and surrounding. You have a wide views there. But on the other hand, when you walk a little bit through, you can find the empty spaces, which the people going there maybe don't know why they are empty and why the recreational part is not developed. And we find these places, these empty spaces, as something that can reveal the traces from the past. And as you will see in the next slides, that the trees and ruins, yeah, can show the these traces of the past. Yeah, thank you.
Next one.
And okay, so I continue with this. And so going to the context, so on the first like picture, you can see the city of Riga and the location of Jungfernhof, where actually it's our site of interest. So you can see that it's not far away from the city. What with the public transport, it took more or less 40-50 minutes from the center. And the second picture or the map, it's the concrete context of the Jungfernhof site. So to get to the Jungfernhof, you have to take 3.5 kilometers from the train station, which is on the up of the circle. And we also find it out that here we can find the connection also with the other sites, which is Rumbula Forest Memorial, which the history is connected to the Jungfernhof. And also you can get to the Salaspils Memorial, and this is 7.5 kilometers far away from Rumbula Forest. So we find this connection between these three sites, and this is like the our context, you can also say. Next.
Sorry.
Yeah, and this is our main idea in one picture. So designing concept is based on the commemorative walking. And on the map, you can see that we would like to start this commemorative walking from the train station. And this first part we called journey. This part is situated in between the buildings. There are many houses, the school, and you will get in the end of this first part to the crossing point, where is the direction to Rumbula and Salaspils with the car, not by foot, but by the car. And from there, we want to continue with the second part, which is arriving part, where you can find more empty spaces with the greenery and one continuous wall, which was for us inspiring. When you will see it in the next slide. And the third part of our commemorative walking and should continue, but we just focus on this three parts, is Jungfernhof, where we divided also the trail in some spots. You can go next. So the first part, as I said, it starts from the train station and it goes to the crossing point, and it's the point where the victims were coming into the train, and they had to get off from this spot and go by foot all this part. And on the next slide, you can see how we imagine this arriving or starting point from us. So once some people or visitors will come to the train station, they will find the spot where they can read about the history and some explanation about the meaning of the line, which will be on the like not floor but on the ground, and on this ground, because we were provided with some really touchful texts and testimonials from the victims. This line should be on this line should be some texts which are recording the terrible environment, temperature, and also what happened in 29th of November in 1941, and how the victims were, in which state they were. So this is the first part, journey. So the arrival, as I said, is starting from the crossing point, where is the big street, and it starts with the greenery and the wall. And we want to, yeah, you can go next. We imagine that this walk will be still accompanied by this line, where still will be some texts which are recording the way of the days. And also this line is there for guiding the people to the site. You can go next. And yeah, Ina, it's your
My turn.
time.
And yes, and then you arrive at the third part, which is like under the name stay, and it should be like more about like more about the stay at Jungfernhof of the victims and how it was, but also like that the experience is more about like staying at the place and not walking, because the first two parts are more like the walking experience. And we want that there will be like 6 sound installations that tell you stories about also from the perspective of the victims and the survivors, about different aspects of that space at Jungfernhof. And it should and those texts should be from like the trial reports or other reports that are given. And then you have like those 6 different sound installations, and they should be about like one should be about the arrival, also because it's like because they victims arrived from here, and so this one is the first one, or not the first one in like there are no numbers, but like it is where they arrived. And then there should be a one about the barrack situation, and also there will be arrows or like a guidance where you have to look at to like maybe see something or not see something, because for example at the barrack there are no traces, but that you can imagine, and then you hear what they say and tell you about the situation with the barracks, that it was so cold and that they were not really suitable to live in them. And then there's the mass grave, where it will be also a directed where you have to look at. And then about the hospital and the water mill, which is on one side about the water mill that's now here and renovated, and there was a clothing sewing workshop in it. And here is the hospital, and there's like the ruin of it. And then there will be one about the manor house and the river. And the last one will be about Rumbula and Salaspils, because we thought that here would be a potential walking path along the river to those two sides. And yes, and the different sound installations should be connected with stepping stones, but with no direction. So you can like go to this one or to this one. And like you can see here, here's the first one, like the arrival at Jungfernhof. And here would be like the one about the barrack, and the different sound installations should all be in the same color, so you can see them, but there's no prioritizing of them. And also there should be like vegetation that shows to make them a bit more present. And here's the example of the mass grave sound installation, which will be situated in between the not forest, like the trees, because it has like a really interesting feeling to it. And also we didn't want that you don't go too near to the potential mass grave. And here we have an idea how we would like to make the mass grave present. We thought about like a meadow vegetation, and which is like really natural, and then stones that mark the border of the mass grave. And here is another example from the ruin of the hospital, where you can then look through it, and also like there will be like a view to the water mill. And here's the one where about the barrack, but like I said before, there is no like barrack visible anymore, but then you can hear the stories and like imagine how it was. And also like you see the wide view and how like long the landscape is. And here we have some like examples how the sound installations could look like, and like more like different shapes just for inspiration. And also here different pictures of like the vegetation, like that is higher, and then you have those mown aspects, and the stepping stones, which also could be like bigger. So thank you for your attention, and we are happy for questions and comments.
Thank you very much, Michaela and Ina. And I invite everyone for comments, especially welcome to Alfred Bienesch and Hinter Kurz. They don't know, they haven't seen your project at all until now.
Right.
So please.
May I start to ask a question first? It's interesting for me, the combination of the visual, directing the visual, how to tell the all the visitors where they should look at, but to do it with the sound. The combination of the sound it's for me a little bit weird, because if I'm listen to the sound or turn to the sound usually. But your idea is to, it's like a stereo MC box where you stand in front and you look at the point of interest, and in your back it will be full of sound or storytelling, or how can I imagine that? It's a mix of different senses. That's the interesting idea, I guess. But I can't. Yeah, I can understand the idea, but I don't know how it works, because it's. Is it like a big speaker, or is it? Because you showed some examples. Are there different speakers, or is it like a ship steam horn, a big one, or?
I think we thought about that it should be like from one side, that you hear it like here, and then you look at what in this direction, so it comes from the side. But also to like write down, because maybe this isn't enough guidance to write it on the speakers where the view should be, and where the different things are that they can look at.
So the speakers are always combined with some information.
Yes.
Because that's the second question. If they don't work, you need some information. It's just a few but no sound, and the sounds are stories, or is it an explanation, or is it a sound mix, or is it?
We thought about that they should like from the trial reports we read, and that it should be some part from that, like a real story that was told, and that you hear these stories, and like no mixing, or so, just like what is given. And also we wanted that there should be some information on the speaker about like where the view is going, and something about that place, like about the barracks, some information also.
Yeah, and also another idea that we had is that when the audio will start, the voice can guide the visitor and tell in front of you in this direction was the barrack, and like make the imagine of the spot which is not anymore there, and so also through the voice it can direct the visitor.
So it's kind of there's a guide. These are guides. The sound installations are guides, and it's not in a sense of our mixed sound ambient, but it's not storytelling. It's just like a narrator who tells you what happened, and what you have to look at.
No, it should, as maybe at the beginning there is like a guiding, like where you should look at and so on, but then there is a story. Like our main idea is that parts of the trial reports, or like I think there are other documentations of people about the survivors, from the survivors, and this texts, like part of the text should like be in the speak as like I don't know the word.
Storytelling.
Yes.
Like storytelling.
Okay, so it's like a tourist guide. These are fixed tourist guides who tell you what you have to see, and then it starts about the facts that happened here that are combined with the visual today appearance of the landscape. So
yes,
it's a mixture.
Yeah, maybe.
Like some actor would read those historic texts, and
yes.
you can visualize the today appearance of this site where the things happen that you hear about.
Yeah, and also Karen said that there are like 2 survivors who live, and that this could also be an idea that those 2 like read the text, or not read it or tell something.
Okay, so yeah, the contemporary witnesses, oral history pieces, and it works. Is it self-working, or do we have to with some code, or with your mobile, or start? Does it start from itself, or is it a button, or just interesting technical feature?
Yeah, to be honest, we didn't think about that too much, or yes, because it was more about the concept and how we wanted it to work, but like we were not so detailed about it.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
May I add something to that point? I think maybe we can understand these speakers and steels more as a symbol for a stop where you have to listen, and then you can like use it through an app. So then we don't have to deal with the languages, so as that everyone like can use his digital devices to listen to them. So it's just like a point where to stop, and then yeah, then I think you have inserted this layer of speakers with combined with the stepping stones, and I think if there is more potential on these stops for interventions. I think so, just as we have discussed now, like in what direction to look, if you have anything which stimulates you to look somewhere or not. So I think there could be more than just the flower bed and the steels. Like if there had been more time to think about those stops, what the character could be, and what like your interventions from the landscape design position could be.
Okay, so this is on purpose. That it appears to me that the speakers are looking like a little bit strange non-site objects that don't belong to here, but that's on purpose, so that you could start it and think, oh, what about that? What's that? And not in combination with the history of the site. It's not a part of a piece of the concentration camp pieces, but it's on purpose a completely different sign that is going to call there is something, but you can only see it if you encounter it and listen. Or it's a good idea to have a multi-channel display, because if your mobile doesn't work, if the speaker doesn't work, you can read it. And on the other hand, that's a very important thing, because I know it from many of the artists' pieces in public space that work by video or sound installations. They're very often get broken, of course, are not restored and just exist as a sculpture, yes, but they don't work anymore. And so you have to think about it. If something is going to crack, does it still work? That's a very important point for such installations, to my experience. Yeah, so it's a good idea to combine it. Yeah.
Indra has a question or a comment?
I probably can somehow as a question. You mentioned in your presentations that when you arrived in a site, it was idyllic scenery and wide views, and so there was this history was hidden. And so with your design, what emotions, what feelings do you plan to bring to this site? And how you plan how to somehow interact with existing feelings? So the first part would be that thanks for your delicate work, but yeah, now to the question about feelings of visitors. What feelings you plan to design like that? Can you try?
Yeah, it is. Mhm. Yeah, it's because we call it like commemorative walking, and already the start from the train station should make or should prepare the visitor that there will be this story that because there are so touchful texts that we find. It's we can say about the temperature that people arrived and there was minus 30 degrees and they had to walk. So we want to report these sentences on the during the walk, so people already can get in touch with these informations. And what we want to like which emotions we want to create is also this fact that when you come to the Jungfernhof, it's this idyllic. You have these nice emotions when you come there, and so we don't want to break them, but also on the other hand, we want to take this memory and through the sound create these emotions with the wide views while you are in the middle of this nice scenery. So it can be controversial into you because you feel as a person there like nicely, but when you hear the story you can also imagine in by yourself what happened there. So it's we didn't want it to be like you come there and you immediately know with the big memorial what happened, but we wanted to be more soft with this, but also create some also emotions which are maybe not so nice as is the site.
Thank you. And if you will consider to record something, I'm speaking from the side of as I was a child of my father was sent to Siberia, so I have the feeling. Very personal in some different direction, but yes, it's also good to record children if they could read that, if you're coming to that point. Thank you.
Karen, you want to continue? Unmute your micro.
Okay. I love seeing this again. You've made even a few more updates. It's a beautifully conceived project. And I particularly love the grave site and how you've developed that. These are really interesting and complicated questions. And this is sort of our first initiative in terms of planning what this could all look like. So, you know, phase number one is going to be, well, what's the economic cost? How do we reduce cost? Phase number two is going to be, what are the safety issues that we need to consider? All of these things become sort of a later component. I also liked how you contextualized it and put it in relationship to other sites and other camps. What is really, I love the concept of a commemorative walk. And what's interesting is that it's right next to a promenade, which is another walk. And that walk has no history. And you're trying to create a walk that is thoughtful and reflective and contains history. So these two options are very interesting to contrast in terms of how you put them together. It also seems, and Ilya can comment on this, it also seems that there needs to be some form of an address of this idyllic landscape and park. How did that happen? You know, that's not the intention of the memorial. That happened in between. What was that intention? And how do you work with that intention? And how do you work with the conflict of emotions between this beautiful landscape and this terrible history. How did that happen, that these two things are side by side? And what was the history prior to that? So the concept of storytelling is actually very embedded in our whole project and in our whole concept. And so that is very lovely to extend in this direction. There aren't that many survivors, and we're not sure how many stories we're going to be able to really find, but that is a goal. So I like the auditory component. Yes, this issue of how things break in the public space, and whether cell phones are more reliable. The other question is the audience, is that most survivor families live all over the world. They don't live in Riga, they don't live in Vienna. So your presentation is very site specific, as it should be. But how do we reach the global audience? How do we do that in different ways is another question. And as we listen to the proposals, I was struck last time at how distinctly different each proposal was, which is lovely to see. We also might want to think about the intersections between the different proposals and how they might be combined or worked with. I also like the idea of, stimulated from this proposal, is the idea of workstations, that we have memory stations is really what you're developing. And how do we do that in an open field is interesting. Alfred, since you haven't been there, let me just emphasize, this is such a blank space. You know, how do you manifest content with so much inarticulated history? It's a challenge.
Yeah, because as you mentioned, the contrast between the nowadays reality and as I always call it, the sunken, unseen landscape, the invisible landscape down there and its history. It's so hard to, it's like a hell and sky, and how to deal with that and to transmit it into storytelling as well, into objects, or as you mentioned, it's a really very important point that most of the victims and their relatives are not able to come there again, as the victims don't live anymore, yes, but their relatives are not able to visit it. And the general use of this site is probably by people who don't have any idea about that or don't care about. And if you walk in there every day, maybe it's some kind of obstacle for you to be remembered every time again. But how to deal with the problem that those who should remember are spread all over the world? That's a point. It's in every site we have the same problem, because people living in this area don't want to be concerned too much with the problem. So at some point they say it's enough. We know it, and okay. So don't tell me every day what happened here. But it's very important to combine it for the people who see it every day, and for those who are very seldom or never at that site. So that's a very important point you mentioned. It should be remembrance, a memorial for all over the world. Yeah, how to do it. It's the same problem, how to come into a visible language for the things we don't see anymore, for the people living at that site today. It's very hard, because everyday living with memorials is not easy. It's not easy to design a memorial for everyday living. Yeah, that's okay. But you tried, because I think it's, I always compare it with acupuncture, with the Chinese method of acupuncture. And if you have it's a method of healing, yeah. And if you acupuncture the landscape at the points where things happen, to have some kind of a needle, your needles are some kind of sound objects, yeah, or multi-purpose objects. But for me, it's one approach to get in touch with the invisible parts of landscape and to get them into the present. But it's always hard to do it in that way that everyone will realize they are there, in the sense of, okay, I'm walking around with my dog every day at the area, and my dog is going to use that as a dog stop. Yeah, that's everyday life. And on the other hand, the people living in United States and the relatives of the victims are not able to visit the site, but there should be some connection in it. Maybe like in Austria for the skiing areas, you have all those webcams. You can see the site, what happens in the site, but some kind of connection in that way would be interesting, as Karen mentioned. That's one of the main problems to solve, to work in a place that is used every day, but it's not for all the people every day, but it's a memorial for all. So yeah, now I stop. I'm turning.
I think for us it was clear that we address the site over there and make something on the site, introduce a new layer of history, something like that. And within this 3.5 days when we stayed in Riga, it's like we all the 3 groups, they worked more like introducing the history or making them history visible for everyday users, and not like designing a memorial. And I think it is we as a teacher, we didn't interfere with that on that point. And I think all the 3 concepts are that why that you always can integrate a monument, which is designed by someone else who's more competent to design memorials than a landscape architect. So I think it was this this discourse we had on the side of how to experience the history there on your own everyday walk, how to how to make them people think about it more than like attracting visit or corresponding to visitors who come there by car and have a look at the memorial. And after all, we are like part of the process of Karen's project, so which is then has more on a global level than the site.
So it was a conscious decision to not design landscape designing whole areas, but just to stick to points and make some hints. It was, we probably discussed it at the site as well. You could have designed whole areas into a new landscape and say this is a landscape memorial in a whole site, and don't have only signs or acupuncture. This was a decision you made before, or was it a process?
No, it was part of the process.
Part of the
You'll
process.
see the next, the second project is more, there's more like they are introducing a stronger design element, but it was within the process. Because
being a landscape designer, you may have sometime the need to design in a large manner, not to reduce to one single point, and as you mentioned, it's several sculptors or artists are able to design a great object. At the point, it's not our part as a landscape designer, I understand it, but we are always at the border to over-design everything. So that's my experience in everyday landscape design as well, especially if it's a park. It's a park and a park area for recreation, and we want to have a showcase, if you say it like this. So it's a good aspect to say we're going to reduce our impact in the design into some hints and some as you did it with talking with two senses, in the sense of looking and listening into these areas, but nothing more. Well, you mentioned that you're planting some meadows. That's the only impact you're going to do in the area. Is that right, as I understood? Or
yes, exactly. But it should also be, the meadow should be like the area, like the surrounding area. So it should be really natural. And the other one is like that we do those stepping stones. That's also introduced to the site, but nothing more except the sound installations.
But these stepping stones are on a path that is already used, or is it?
Not all of them.
Okay, so it's leading. It leads the people to the places that are not yet available for. Yeah, available probably, but.
Yeah. But they guide you there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Karen has another question, and then I would say we switch to the second project.
Karen, you have to
unmute.
So you raise important questions. I think we have to, the website gives a lot more information about the overall project. But a fact is that this site has been developed for 800 years. So there's lots of history at the site. And one of the reasons why it was, why the recreation park minimized the camp is that the camp only occupied 2 out of the 800 years. But those 2 years are significant. So do we diminish those 2 years, or do we really pay attention to them and the lessons that they have to communicate? The other thing is that this project, working with landscape architects, became the first part of this whole process of developing the site, which is, I think, not how it usually works. Usually there's a memorial and the landscape artists come in afterwards. So this is a different way of approaching it. And what happened as a result is that I think I'm very impressed with the strength of these ideas and how much content they hold in terms of memorial content. So we'll see how this develops over time. There will be a committee that is formed to really evaluate how this will look in the end. But I think the struggle about which history is being remembered on this site is also an important question to think about.
So if there are no further comments, I think we switch to the second project. Hannah and Aaron, can you share your screen?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Can you hear us?
Yes, it's working.
So,
okay, so hello and welcome to our presentation. Our project is called Building Connections. Here you can see first sketches when we have been there. The first day we have made some sketches, and yeah, we wanted to show like the first feelings, and yeah, we made some short sketches. And here we come to our concept. Our main goal when we looked at the surrounding was to connect the Jungfernhof area with the Salaspil Memorial, and it goes directly through the Rumbula Forest Memorial. So our idea was to connect like these three memorial spaces together. And when we look at our site, we wanted to connect the present with the past. And when we have been there, like the first day, it was heavily used by bikes and runners, and mostly on the riverside down here. And we thought it is quite important to connect like this riverside with the more slowly and more silenced area in the back. So we thought about connecting this road, Riverside Road, with the ruins here, and then with the tree grove, and then it will end at the expected mass grave. And so we made a ground plan, and here you can see like this Riverside Road where it was like really heavily used, and we thought about connecting the ruins and the tree grove, and then it ends up at the mass grave, and then it goes like in this direction, it goes to the Rumbula forest, and then it ends up at the Salaspil forest. Here we made like a small section where you can see like these different areas. So it starts here at the front with the entrance, also with some info points where you get like first informations, and then you can walk like this path, and you can stop at the ruins, you can cross them. Then we have like this tree grove where it's a bit darker, and you can sit and feel the emotions, and then it ends up back down here at the mass grave, also with some info points. Now we'll give it to Hannah.
And now these 4 areas a little bit more detailed. So as Aaron said, first area should be the entrance to the memorial. And we thought about redefining the entrance. The obvious entrance would maybe be like the street where the parking lots are, because people arrived there back then with the victims. The journey started or ended here. But as Aaron said, we wanted to connect it like with the today's views. So we redefined the entrance and made it to or started here at the promenade. And at the info board, we want to tell the story about the journey people had to take from the home to this site. So this should be the connection to like their journey and nowadays. And here are some small pictures how we imagine the entrance, how the materials, how the materials and the vegetation should look. And the picture in the middle is the one at the train station, the memorial that now exists, and we want to make it like kind of similar to have the reference there. Then the second area are the ruins, where you could walk like a little small hill up. So it's more like the highlight but it's the area we imagine people would first recognize, because you can see the remaining ruins and you start to question what happened there. So we want to guide the access through the ruins, but somehow stop the normal path. If you can see here, on the left picture, the normal path should stop, and just 2 lines should guide the people through the ruins, and the axis should begin again after them. So we want to break through the perfect axis there. Then the third area is the tree grove, where we want to, we want people to have completely different feelings. We want to create like subspaces where you have space to commemorate, a space of silence somehow. So we want people to stay there and really have like, their silence and their, with their own emotions and thoughts. And then another thing, we want to have like different vegetation here in different heights, like weeds in different heights, so you are like not too much connected with the other people, so you have a little subspace just for your commemoration. And if you walk further on this axis, you end up in this mass grave, which we want to somehow highlight or at least frame it so it's not walkable and people don't step on it. And we imagine it like with weeds as well, but like just a natural growing vegetation, somehow like the dead coming through the surface. And if you stand here, you can look like in this direction to these other memorials, like the Salaspils and the Rumula forest. And we want people here to have like information written here and also the reference to the other memorials, so connecting it with the others. Yes. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions and comments from our guests?
Well, maybe yes, one more question about the basic design idea. It's some kind like a large pathway from, I didn't understand where it starts, the entry. You told that the entry is not a historic entry, it's just because of the axis that's going straight through the 3 points of interest.
Not only because it's the axis, but because we were there on site and people were mainly using like walking on this promenade here down the riverside and coming from the city center here with their bikes and walking their dogs. And so we thought, getting the attention of people, maybe this would be for us the perfect entrance.
Yeah. Because we thought that most people are using this place, but they don't know what was there before, and so we want to make them like
and they're walking here down this little path.
Most people use this.
And the area of the tree grove and forest grove and ruins, are they used as well today, or is it just like a picnic area, or?
I mean, the ruins are not really used.
I mean, we saw some broken glass there, but we didn't see people in the ruins. But in the tree grove or at the meadow around and the grass around, there were people doing sports and walking through.
Because Okay, because your design is quite the contrast to the group before. It opens up the points of interest, places of historic remnants, with a superstructure, might call it, and it's kind of a pathway, but as well as an area for to remain there, as you explained for the forest grove, for example. But it's kind of it's a pathway to the mass grave area, or is it more like it's not a promenade, but you keep.
It should somehow be like a guide through the site.
Yeah, we thought about that it should end then at the mass grave, and
So it's a path for itself. It is some
Yeah,
pathway.
it's a new layer, new path for this site.
But as well, as far as I understand, it's a place for people to stay there as well.
Yeah.
It's a mixture of moving and.
Yes, we imagined these 4 areas like somehow different. Some are just for walking through, and some are for staying there and be there. Yeah.
And the kind of structure you choose, or as you showed the examples like New York Skyline, or is it made of concrete slabs, or are these stone, or is it? It's not like the stepping stones we saw.
Maybe I go back. Wait, we imagine it like with concrete stepping stones, but like in this. Where do we have it? Wait, sorry.
Weiter.
Yeah. Here, like somehow steel or cortina steel, a band guiding through, and the others should be like more concrete stones. Because of the cold climate, we couldn't imagine any other surface.
So it's a kind of a dissolving structure, dissolving into the surrounding.
Yes.
Yeah.
It opens
and it
up
should follow like the slope. It should follow the slopes of the side now. So like the little hills should be like highlighted with that.
Also, there is a landscaping.
Yes, a little bit, not too much, but a little bit. Yeah.
It's not just and
it's not just flat. It's like
here you
little,
have
just a flat area, because I don't know.
Yes, but there are somehow like a meter difference.
Yeah, not much
from like the entrance to the ruins, or 1.5 meter.
But your concept is the idea of bringing people into the area of those historic remnants to memorial by activity, more in the sense, or?
I don't think we want to bring more people there, because there are a lot of people using the site. We just want to give them space to commemorate and including it in their daily use, because there are a lot of people. I don't think there is the need of bringing more people to the site, because they are using it now. But we just want to have like including in their use now, we want to have like the commemoration. That's somehow our idea or our focus.
So it's a kind of a separated space, newly created separated space, because it's a new superstructure, quite a new layer upon the landscape. So people will be able to use it for every day as well, having their lunch. I have no idea, but isn't that a kind of danger in it to let the people move into the very core areas of the history of the 2 years of the concentration camp, and to let them behave like everyday life? Is that no problem, or I'm just asking you?
I think when they use this path, they use it because of purpose, because they want to use it. And when they use it like the daily use, and they go for a bike ride, they will use like the road down there. So I think they will use this access if they are interested and they wanted to know what's there. And I think for the daily use, most people will use like the
the areas that are existing.
Yeah,
I mean, we don't want to ban people from the open space because we thought like it's really needed there because there were so many people using it like in different ways. We want just to have like a space for commemoration as well. Like for us, we had a long discussion about it, but for us, both is possible at the same time somehow.
Daily use
or
and
should be possible.
Commemoration by daily use, because it's of course a new structure within the park that's going to be interesting for the everyday use as well. But maybe the commemoration does work in this way as well, because it's used and not only commemorated as a space. Yes, that's the idea.
Yeah, that's exactly the idea, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for the comment. I think Ulrike is next, and then Karen. If you just ask your questions or your comments.
I like this idea of introducing like a superstructure on this site to raise awareness, to tell the history. And I think there is like more potential on this to define this structure. We have talked about like including infrastructure. Do you remember like maybe benches or something or lighting within this structure, and to integrate vegetation, plantings. So I think there is more potential how to react to these topics. But what is most important is like the topography, and we have talked about it a lot too. And you should like look at the section which is going just along this axis, and this section like is flat, but it's about 2 meters difference in level going the hill going up to the ruins.
Yes.
So that's like a great issue within the project. And like we have talked, do you remember we've talked about how this X can like contact the hill, the ruins, can be different strategies, but however you have to deal with the topography. Yeah, X has to react on that.
Yeah.
You have a difference of 3 meters from the entrance to the ruins. You should
3 meters.
3 meters. You have the lines of light here, and I think it's also well visible on your collage. So, and I think it's because
yes, that's true. We need to include that in our section.
And there you see it also on the picture, and it's something that's very important for your existence.
Yes.
Please, Uli, if you have some. Okay, Karen. Please.
Hi. So the history of the site is complicated, and I presented a memorial idea in 2010, and it was rejected because the site was so abandoned. And when I came back in 2019, the willingness to entertain a proposal was based on how the site has become a recreation park, and it is no longer remote. That the population of people at the site made it more possible to entertain the idea of memorial. So we have almost like 2 choices. Well, the site could either remain still abandoned and trashed, or it could become a recreation park and have the benefit of people. But how do we work with the recreation park? So I think you took that challenge head on. I don't know how that's going to happen. It does feel like the recreation will win in the end. And so how do you integrate memory with recreation? And we don't know right now, the development for the recreation park is paused, but we don't know how it will expand and how that will change things. And the other really tragic issue is that there are no visible remains of the camp. Those have all been destroyed. So what remains are sites that are more relevant to where the Nazis' headquarters were and where they slept. And I guess it related to a hospital that didn't really have medicine, and some of the workstations. So the prisoners' living quarters no longer exist. And so the ruins that exist are not even that relevant in some ways. So it's a difficult site to work with. It's a difficult site to insert memory and change the habits of remembering, in Latvia. And I think that would best happen by bringing school children regularly to the site and to really integrate. I don't believe this site is even listed on commemoration sites in Latvia yet. Hard to believe. So we're really trying to change the habits of memory, and how to interact with what the assets of the site are, which are people. How do we redirect them into a memorial space? Is something that you really took on, and it's really challenging.
Okay, thank you. That's Indra. Do you have?
Yeah, thank you for your work. I would agree it's a complicated site, and also it was kind of not even abandoned, but it was not used. So there was giving the new lines for the walking, for pedestrians, and so on. So it started to be alive. And yes, I visited it after this renovation, and I was surprised how nice this place is also. So I have visited it. So, but my question would be how you imagine it. The first group did this commemorative walk as a walking practice, and how you imagined if you would be like as a choreography. What happens, like step by step, like in a theater, when you enter, what happens with you personally when you enter this site, and how deep like these feelings go in? Are they shocking at the beginning, like in a movie, in a film? So how step by step you can come to something? Maybe you have in your imagination already that? And so that would be the question. The comment would be that there is tragic events in our lives, and then a lot of us have experienced quite tragic, and this one is in a scale very, very large. So how to include them in our lives? I would agree that it's important, and how not to isolate us from these events. How to not isolate the ones who are not somehow involved in these pains, but how to invite, maybe like that way. So otherwise, I will stay away. I don't want pain. I don't want to know. But yeah, so probably two questions. To invite, to understand, to these pains, to these tragics, and how you like this path, this choreography, have you thought?
When it comes to your question about the emotions, or about like how we imagined it, we imagined these 4 areas, like different, so you could have different feelings and emotion at each area. Like we said, the tree grove should more be like the silent area where you really, oh, sorry, the sun, where you really come for like commemoration and for really like think about the past. Then we have like, yeah, the mass grave, which feels tragic and we want to shock a little bit, but just also have like silent area, but at least like the entrance is more like the active area where people walk through or even not and take like the step on the axis or not, and still have some information about the journey victims had to take. But I feel like it's a different emotion than like in a tree grove where you really have like your silence and not too much activity. So yes, of course we want to tell like a story, and you could walk like from the first area to the second, to the third, to the fourth, but we imagined it like you could just enter the axis at the third area, the tree grove, and if it's enough, then it's enough. You don't need to have like go through all the 4 areas in that order.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the comments and questions. Yes, I think this also this question of choreography was very interesting, and also is combined to the comment before that this structure might also, that it's maybe at the moment an idea that's a bit raw and might be also be filled up with other assets like vegetation or also surface to maybe strengthen this choreography or the emotions on these different spots. So I would suggest we come to our third and last project from Alexandra and Lena. Please, if you would share your screen and start.
So can everyone see that? So now we're going to present our design concept. Our concept is called Retelling History. But first I will start with the potentials of the site and also the analysis. What we saw at the site was that it was really peaceful and idyllic, and there were many natural elements. There was a really nice view over the river, and it was all quite nice, and it was kind of a contrast to the history of the site. We also found some different atmospheres. There were more open spaces like the meadow, and there were also denser sites where the tree groves are. And we also noticed there were many people, and they were just relaxing and using the space as a recreational space, and also people doing yoga and people going for a walk, biking. So there were many people, and we thought of that as a big potential of the site because people already know this place and they go there, and this is something that you can use when creating a commemorative site. And so to our design idea, we wanted to retell the story of the Jungfernhof concentration camp. When for preparation for the design concept, we got some text. We read text from survivors. We also got some text from Karen, and when reading them, we kind of created our idea, and we wanted to use the quotes from the survivors to retell the history of the everyday life and the life or the happenings at the concentration camp.
Thanks. So our concept was that we wanted to create 5 commemorative stops, which you can see now on the plan. And the 5 stops should have a reference to the events that happened on the Jungfernhof concentration campsite. And we wanted to use signage and additional elements or interventions. And the idea is that it should not be like a statue park, but more like interventions where people can interact and somehow interact with the site and experience the history. And the stops are not in a chronological order. They are positioned on a specific spot that stands for the specific situation that is then described. And the idea is that those elements that we implement, they should create a curiosity among the visitors of the park, and that draws them then to the stops and let them interact with them. Yeah, so then they have an experience that is more on a personal level. Next slide, please.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, now I'll explain the 5 stops a little more deeply. So the first stop is the arrival stop, and there we wanted to implement a rocky path to symbolize the walk the inmates had to take from the train station to the campsite. They described the walk as very cold and burdensome, so this should be a reference to the rocky path. And the next stop are the barracks. It is placed where the former barracks of the camp are at least expected to be, and several survivors in the reports described the beds where they had to sleep in the barracks as like narrow as bookshelves. So we thought about implementing bookshelves as a symbol, and we presented this idea also in Riga, and Ilya had the idea that it would be nice to make those bookshelves as like open bookshelves where locals can trade books or like take books and bring some there. So we liked the idea and implemented it now. And the next stop is the forest. This is a symbolic place. It stands for the nearby Rumbula forest, where a lot of mass shootings took place, where the people, like some of the inmates were brought there and killed. And we thought about implementing tree trunks in different heights, like in heights of the people from adults to kids. And this should be a reference to the victims that died during those mass shootings. And the next stop is the river Daugava stop. It's placed on the ruin, because at the end of the ruin you have a very nice view to the river, and we thought about implementing a huge picture frame. And when you look through it, you have this nice view, but when you look more closely, we want to engrave or implement some signage where you can read what actually happened there during the time of the concentration camp. And we thought about implementing the story that when the well froze during the winter times, people had to drink the water from the river and diseases spread. So this could be like a very controversial stop. And the last stop is the stop of the mass grave, which has recently, at least potentially, been discovered. And this should be a silent place for commemoration. And we wanted to frame it with a wooden path with a banister, and this is also a potential to engrave the names of the victims. And the banister should also prevent people from the grave from it being stepped on. And the grave will be planted with wildflowers and should look very natural. And yes.
And to our materials, we wanted to use the same materials for all of the stops, so that could be kind of a connecting element, because the stops are not connected with a path or something like that. We wanted to use dark steel and also some kind of light wood for the or tree logs for the forest and also for the bookshelf. And for the grave, we wanted to have wildflower bed or like kind of a meadow, also similar to the vegetation that is already there, but with more flowers. And now to the details or to the steps. So I'm going to read the quotes that we're thinking of implying there. So we were told that 1,500 people were brought to a fishnet factory in Dünemünde. Later, we heard that those people were shot in a mass killing in the forest. So here you can see the three logs representing forest, and we also want to have those steel kind of elements where we could write those quotes, but also other quotes could be written there because many people were talking about those mass shootings. And we want to implement that in the tree grove or in the little forest. And the tree logs are standing quite dense so that you can see that there were a lot of people who were shot there. And next detail. If it's working.
Connection is a bit slow.
Yeah, maybe I turn off my camera.
Yes.
Maybe it works
better
now.
It's working now. We see it clear.
So, is this the right one? Oh, sorry. So to the next detail is the mass grave, where Lena already mentioned with the flower bed and also the board of the names and the banister, and you can walk around it. And also there we have a quote from Judel Katz. The ground was frozen so that it was impossible to bury the dead. A demolition squad was ordered. Still we had to dig. So this quote also represents the situation where they decided to implement this mass grave, and also that the inmates of the camp were still involved in digging the hole, and it was hard, and it kind of makes or kind of represents the emotions and also the situation. So the next slide, if that works. Yeah. Sorry, that was one too far. But anyways, so the next detail is the one from the barracks, where we wanted to implement the bookshelves representing the barracks. And there the quote is, shelves were built upon each other with so little space in between that one could only move around lying. So this also represents a kind of an everyday situation where people had to sleep and there was not a great place to sleep. They had to sleep in those kind of bookshelves, and there you can see them. And also we had Ilya had the idea that you could use them as kind of open bookshelves for locals to trade books or to bring books there. And yeah. And so the next detail is a section from the ruin where we have that frame where you can see over the river. And the quote we have there is, there was no well water, so we had to drink water from the river. Diseases spread. So this is kind of also an everyday situation where and the intention is that people go to this spot because they think that there is a nice view, and there is a nice view, but then on second hand, they see the quote and they kind of have another connection to the river than just a nice view. And so that was it from us, and we're open for some questions.
Thank you very much. Questions, comments?
Okay, if I may, I start again. I'm sorry, I start always. It seems to me you tried maybe the question that Inda was asking before. It's about evocating feelings in this era. It seems to be that your design is trying to create different spaces for evocating feelings about or with the history. Is this correct? Or is it just because you try to design places within the remnants of the historic campsite, and you try to redesign these remnants? Or was it on purpose from the beginning that you tried to evocate some evoke feelings for every visitor, how it might have been being a prisoner in camp?
I think both is the case, because we wanted to create kind of a disruption in the current park site, and that people see something that they don't expect there, and which is in some ways kind of an abstract version of, for example, the barracks. And then they go there, and because they expect something different, or they're not quite sure what to expect there, and then they see what it's actually standing for, and this might create some emotions and make them think about what happened there.
So it's you try to work with the things objects, landscaping, vegetation you found at the site, and you try to combine them with typical commemorating facilities, let's say it this way, like the steels you use in the forest. So people are aware that this is a commemoration site. You try to deal with the era, on the contrary to the other group, with the superstructure calling, come in, everyone come in and commemorate. And so on the contrary, you try to create those little spaces, recalling the people, this is an era to commemorate within this park era. Or is it more, because you mentioned that you're going to reflect the mass shootings in another site, not at this era as well. So you try to have a commemoration site not only for this era, but for these other sites around it.
Yeah, well, the main idea was to retell the history, and we didn't want to retell the history with only using like one sign and there you can read all about what happened there, but we wanted people to come there and have an experience while learning about the history, so that you have a more personal connection, because in every stuff we are implementing those quotes from the survivors, and through reading this and having a connection to something visual, or maybe also something that you can touch, it's something that is more memorable to the people. That was our idea. And then there's this one, like the mass grave, he said this is the one place where this is like a real commemoration site where you can walk around and just be silent and remember the people or the victims there.
So it's idea of teaching the people the history of the site as well as the cruelties around this era. It's a concentrated commemoration site for all those cruelties around it. That's the difference to the others ideas, I guess, as well. Or is it just within the forest and the steels we're talking about another site, or is it everywhere we're going to teach the people the history of the whole area in this Jungfernhof? I don't know where it's, as you mentioned, the other sites before, and the other group had those this axis between the.
Yeah, we don't
sites.
have the connections to other sites. Our idea was just to concentrate on this concentration site and tell the story of only this, what happened on this site specifically.
And the shooting in the forest is also deeply connected to this site because the people who were shot there were inmates of this concentration camp. So there is a connection, and it's just kind of a reference to that happening and to that event that kind of is connected or is connected to this site.
So you're trying to make the people recall the proceedings in the history at that within these 2 years. As Karen mentioned it, it's a very complicated history within this site and every similar sites of cruelties, because there are layers of history so much before and afterwards, and we are still making history on this site. You are designing a new part of history, but you try to concentrate within the 2 years of this proceedings. So everyone stepping into your subspaces is able to evoke the things that happened.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, that's.
Yeah, thank you. I think it also was the comment of integrating discomfort in a way, not just the plain history, but also the emotions that come with the history. Ulrike and Indra wanted to add something. I didn't get who was first. Indra, do you want to start? Yeah.
Yes, I can, quite short. Thank you for your materiality. I loved it. It was also very emotional how you reconstructed, like in a symbolic way, these events. What I was most probably as recommendation this time, I think the work is nice, is to think how through this grief to get back in real life, how to not get like angry and to start to be aggressive. You might have, but then how to reconstruct yourself when you are leaving this site, how to have some hope at the end. So we are not living in these events now. So we have at least some ideas that leave history in these years as when it happened, like in that way. So this might be, have you maybe not expressed here, but have you imagined how that might be solved, how to leave the site? Yeah.
I mean, what we try to create is kind of a second layer to the already existing park function. And so in this case, you can make kind of an excursion into history with those 5 steps, and then also get back into the park function. Yeah.
Okay, yes. I'm just thinking how to just shake away a bit. Yeah, but thank you. And thank you especially for all who use these materials, like also your group, like flowers. It's very important for Latvian society. So the flowers, and we have this traditional flowers. So I think that will bring attention quite strongly to the site. And the trees, we have quite this pantheistic worldview with trees, with nature. So yes, thank you for that, and that's it from me.
Thank you. Thank you.
I want just to have to share some more general thoughts with you, which like evolved during this process during the design course. And I mean, sites dealing or referring to DNS, time of period, and to the horror and to terror are part of everyday life. And like we have tried to explore this topic in Vienna before. And it was a new experience for the students, I think, after all, like addressing this topic as a landscape architect. And when we arrived, then they all said, oh, our ideas we had in Vienna, they don't work at this place anymore. So we have to do something different. This was quite like striking experience then, so that they were rethinking their ideas. And I think it was, for everyone, it was really hard to imagine the horror and the cold there, being on that idyllic place. What helped a little bit were the records of witnesses. And I think what was really impressive was the field trip with Ilya through the Riga ghetto, because like this was a place or a area which is really disturbed, and where you can really feel that there is something wrong, that there's something weird and which you don't understand. A feeling you didn't really get when you walked through Jungfernhof. There is, of course, there is this meadow facing the allotments, but the whole site, it works quite well as it is now, like a area at the periphery of the city, and like extensively furnished and designed as a for recreation. And so maybe I think it was like the task for the students and for me and for us as landscape architects was like how to integrate this task in our personal biographies. How can we deal as landscape architect, or how do we feel when we have to correspond and work with such an issue and task. And maybe therefore it was like easier, or I don't know how to say it, more to insert a new layer with interventions, more logic than just redesigning the whole site, remodeling it all, because it was just, I think it's more this, I don't know if it makes sense, but like it's like integrating the issue, the task in your personal biography, and have to struggle with that. And then it's like more, I don't know, more like a solution to integrate a layer there. which is not that invasive on the site. I don't know. And what was very difficult was how to approach the mass grave. And we had a discussion with Ilya how to deal with the victims and the bones and the corpse. And I said that there is no solution, that there is like one opinion who says that they have to be removed if they find like with victims from the Jewish perspective, religious perspective, or then they used to remove the corpse and bury them there in a grave which is more decent for commemoration, because like the site was not the place they chose to be buried. And then there is another position who says that they have to be left there because it's again like disturbing their how do you say that, disturbing them, their souls. So I think that's, yeah, that was the issue we couldn't solve in Riga, and I think there's has to be a larger discussion about that. So the attempt to deal with the mass grave is even more vague than it's with the other side. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Karen.
It's just really kind of thrilling to watch this process over months. And when Ulrike and I first met, and I looked at some of the work of landscape architects, and I wondered how we could move our discussion to really problem solve this space. And I've seen so much growth over these months with students and the work. I think the visual language, the ideas, I mean, this is a site that has no memory, and you are bringing memory to the site, content in ways, each presentation was unique in that way. And so your contributions are really sort of at the ground of what we need to build on. So I think each presentation was unique and made a different contribution of what we will continue to work with. Also, the general feeling is a feeling of hope that you brought to the site. You also, I think, made the challenge of how we're going to deal with the site more explicit. It's even more difficult than I imagined, you know, how we are going to create that bridge from everyday life into this memory. And whether there'll be a reaction in Latvia of anger, you know, that we're taking away recreation space and turning it into memorial space, and how people will handle that over time. There are a few, one thing that was never actually inserted is one of the pieces of content that we have are the names. So we need to somehow make a naming structure that brings those names in. I liked how you brought in the quotes. The other piece of confusion is that there were no victims from this camp that were murdered in Rumbala. They were all murdered at the Birchniki forest, which is, you know, many miles away. So that clarity is important to make. But these sites are all relevant and in proximity, and how they work together is another pathway to think about. The other thing that was not included, I mean, one of the, so in my own mind, there was the naming memorial and the mass grave, and that the landscape would somehow create the connective tissue. And I think that's what you did. You created an incredible connective tissue with visual language of how the site can come alive with memory, and not in an imposing way, but in a gentle and supportive and engaging way. I'm a little concerned, for instance, about the barracks that become a bookshelf. You know, that's an analogy. But what happens when people bring in a mystery novel? Here, read this. You know, I mean, how do you oversee what kinds of readings will be put on those shelves? I also think it might be an opportunity to try to physically demonstrate the discomfort. I think in one of the earlier drawings, you had people sleeping on the bookshelves or lying down, and what that discomfort might feel like. You know, again, there's the issue of safety, the issue of kids playing on the structure. So that's one question. Another is in terms of looking at the grave sites. They're very beautiful rectangles. And when we've looked at now the actual shape of the grave that is now being revealed digitally, it's very organic. It has a rectangular shape, but it's also organic, and it might be interesting to preserve that as well. The other thing that was not addressed, which is an interesting problem, is that this camp was a slave labor agricultural farm for a year. So this question of how, you know, the idea of a wild meadow or a garden bed, who maintains that in Latvia? And what about an agricultural farm, you know, where you grow root vegetables, potatoes primarily? Would there be a relevance of that? Would there be a way to somehow introduce that? So those are my main questions. I just really loved how each group contributed something new and fresh to this project. The question of the entranceway, what that will look like, where it'll be, that it's a non-hierarchical walking space and place. Thank you so much for all of your work and your original thinking. It will definitely be preserved, and you will definitely be given the attention and the credit as we continue to research and try to, you know, extract stories about this history. And one more thing. With your permission, I mean, I teach courses in public art. I would like to share your presentations with students so they can see how you're thinking and the kind of thoughtfulness you brought to this project and to the site. Because I think this is which we've discussed with Ulrike and Julia, is that this is really a new specialty, the idea of really addressing landscape architecture as a memorial, not as an adjunctive discipline, but as a very important consideration. How do we do that? And I think, again, you've given us lots of content to work with.
Yeah, thank you, Karen. I think this was also one question we wanted to talk about, because you asked us about slides or images from the students that you could use, and the students took 2 slides and we will upload it for you. But did I understand it right? You would need 2 slides, and do you also need some text separately, explanatory texts, or from the students, or are you going to work with the presentations and these special slides for the video? Maybe you unmute and then we can.
I think we want to create a space on the website. This is a history in a camp that has that is missing history. We're starting from scratch, and we don't want to make up history, but you have done a really great job of doing the research and bringing ideas that are gentle and that are not so imaginative that you leave the history behind. You've really been respectful of trying to make those bridges and trying to make the connection to everyday life is, I think, really special and important, particularly in countries that have spent so many years forgetting the past. So how do you reintegrate memory into people's lives? So I think this will be a process in terms of how we represent your work on the website, because our plan is to really develop the website so it becomes a go-to place for people studying this and working with these histories. So funding will be the issue, of course, but this is, I think, a tremendous collection of work and ideas that will be of interest to people. So names will be connected to any images. And one other thing that might be useful is, often people make artist statements, a short writing of what their intention was. One of the things that we don't really understand or hear from so much is this notion of personal growth as we come to terms with difficult histories. And, it's the same in the US and how the industry of slavery has been forgotten and neglected. But whether that is something you would want to address, your own personal process of wrestling with this memory, what was that like? How is that supported in your own education?
Yeah, I think it would also be necessary to show also the images and everything within the whole development of the project, because as you mentioned, it's in an early stage, and the students were developing ideas how to approach and how there might be possibilities to integrate or to put layers or to get the awareness and also to fill them in the right place of the development, I think.
In some ways, this project, this presentation of work deserves its own website. That it's not subordinated to this website, but that it really breathes in its own space. And that you continue to develop curriculum in this way, and maybe use other examples of landscape architecture working in memorial sites. It's an article, it's a film, it's many things, but it's really a great body of work.
Yes.
We have already thought about an article or something like that, so we will work on that, and we will keep everyone informed who has worked on this project. And we have asked the students for 2 pages of explanatory text. And we will go through that, and we will ask the students to revise it then based on our comments, and then we will forward it to you, Karen. I think it's helpful if you have texts as well.
Yeah, well, we have the declaration of consent from the students, so they should all agree to publish their work, but maybe they have to add something. You want question to the students? If you at the moment have something on this issue, but you can address us, of course, if there are any further question, or if you want to make a statement right from your heart, or as to tell us about more how this connection, how this development maybe took place. It's like an invitation. Well, I think we're at the end of our final presentation for the students' work so far. But as Ulrike mentioned, we will be in touch with the students some more, because these texts we want to go through and recommunicate for working over and getting some really nice package of works to give to you, Karen, and also for the students to have something that they might have also their part taken in the project. Yeah, thank you very much. Special thanks to our guests from Latvia, Indra and Ilya. Thank you very much for joining. And Alfred has given us a lot of inputs and nice comments. I think we all profited. And of course, thanks for the students for their participation and their works. And yeah, I think we will be in touch, at least sharing links of the homepage of the further story going on. And yeah, all the best so far. Thank you very much. And see you soon, hopefully.
Thank you all for your work.
Thank you.
And truly, I think it's really important for Latvia to bring also to have an exchange, because the students come to work to Latvia to see differently and bring your perspectives. So thank you all organizers and supervisors and all teams for your work, truly.
Thanks for the feedback and the possibility to share.
Yeah, I also would like really thank you for such interesting project and the opportunity we had, and also the work from your side and everything. It was really inspiring for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So hopefully you have a nice day, Karen, and the rest of us a nice evening. And yeah, see you. And best wishes from Vienna to all of you. Bye.
Thank you all.
Bye.
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 Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.